Welcome to a short video on assessment for the Cottrell Scholars Collaborative New Faculty Workshop in Chemistry. The question at the heart of assessment is, how do you know your students are learning? Before assessing your students' learning, you need to outline exactly what you want your students to learn. Once you've established the learning gains of your instruction, then you want to know whether your instruction is effective. Have the students actually learned what you intended them to learn? To do this, you need to outline measurable outcomes based on your learning gains. And then you need to assess these outcomes. Assessment is for students, instructors, and administrators. It is a tool for understanding what students are learning, and it is a collection of data that the instructor can use to evaluate teaching and student learning. Quality assessment should drive student learning. Assessment is essential to quality instruction. As instructors, we can use assessment to regularly check and measure achievement to inform the students of the performance, to monitor the learning of our students and provide feedback to both students and the instructors, to evaluate if our teaching practices are effective, and to promote learning. Assessment should not be reserved for the end of the semester. Assessment should be integrated into the curriculum and regularly and frequently implemented. There are many types of assessment, and I'm listing 3 here: formative, summative, and attitudinal survey. Summative is the typical evaluation that instructors use, such as graded exams, quizzes, laboratory reports, and they are typically for the evaluation at the end of the learning process. Attitudinal surveys can be introduced throughout the semester and are reporting student perception of performance and experience. Formative assessment is implemented during the learning process and provides feedback to the instructor on student learning such that instruction can be modified and misconceptions can be immediately addressed. Summative assessment is probably the most understood assessment and the type of assessment that you have encountered throughout your education. Therefore, I'll only provide 2 examples of summative assessment tools. The first is pre and post testing. Implementing a 20 to 25 question exam that focuses on learning outcomes that you have outlined for the course before and after the course is offered allows you to quantitate the learning gains of your students, facilitating reporting to both department and granting agencies. A quality pre and post exam assessment tool includes, for each question, the correct answer and alternative answers that are frequently the misconceptions of your students. For guidelines on how to design a pre and post test, you can see the URL given here. Another summative assessment tool is a rubric. Rubrics in general have a bad rap and can be misused. To highlight this misuse, we can describe 2 types of rubrics: a scoring rubric and an instructional rubric. A scoring rubric is used exclusively by the instructor to assign grades. An instructional rubric is written according to the learning outcomes desired and has specific identified performance criteria in which the performance levels are set and described in detail. An instructional rubric can be created with students, providing a learning experience and enabling the communication of evaluation criteria very clearly. Thus, designing instructional rubrics with your students is a teaching opportunity. There are advantages and disadvantages to rubrics. One main advantage is that rubrics can introduce reliability and consistency in grading, making the assessment process more accurate and fair. One way to include students in generating the rubric and go through examples of bad and good assignments, highlighting specific criteria that the students and you identify as important to demonstrating proficiency in the assignment. Often you will hear that instructors do not want to give their student rubrics because they want the students to set the bar for the assignment, rather than be just given a list of things to do in which the student needs to meet. One way to incorporate both of these desires is to have a rubric that you've developed with the students and explain that as you've created these criteria with them, that you expect them to also create some on their own and to incorporate those new criteria into their assignments. During the workshop, we will have an exercise about good and bad rubrics, so take a moment to think about what a good and bad rubric may look like. There are many types of formative assessment tools, also known as classroom assessment techniques or CATs. Some that you might consider are the muddiest point, concept mapping, 1-minute paper, case studies, pre-post questions, statement correction, and there are 44 more listed in Angela and Cross, and the reference is provided at the end of this mini lecture. For the sake of time, we'll only cover the first 3. The 1-minute paper. To implement the 1-minute paper assessment tool, stop class a few minutes early and ask the students to briefly respond to what was the most important thing you learned during class and what important question remains unanswered. Students then write their response on index cards. You can expand this assessment, which will take a few minutes longer, such that each individual fills out the answer to these 2 questions, and say those are on white cards. Then, the students get into groups and discuss each other's answers, and they fill out the answers to the 2 questions as a group on a different colored index card. By evaluating the responses as individuals and comparing them to those of the group, you can assess the process in which the students discuss the important points of the class. If you are connected to the internet, the YouTube link below should connect you to a video describing the 1-minute paper. The muddiest point. At any point during class, you can ask the students to write down a quick response to one question. What was the muddiest point in blank? The blank is filled in by you and can be the focus of a discussion, a homework assignment, a reading, the last 10 minutes of lecture. Typically, you'll have the students answer this question on index cards and collect the responses. Look through about half of them and come up with a few categories, and then go and sort all of the questions into these particular categories. You can prepare a response to the muddiest points online, via email, or in the next class. As with the previous slide, if you're connected to the internet, the URL below should open in your browser. The URL links to a YouTube video that describes the muddiest point. Concept mapping. Concept maps are graphic representations of the relationships between concepts. Select a concept as a starting point for a concept map, such as stereochemistry or hemoglobin. Have the students brainstorm for a few minutes, writing down terms and phrases related to the topic. Place the initial concept at the center and begin to write the terms and phrases, connecting them with lines. Determine all the connections and ways that terms are connected, and think about labeling the lines that are connecting the terms. It is very rare that individual concept maps look similar to each other. You can generate a concept map with a large class interactively using the board to generate the map, or students can generate individual maps. An example of a concept map is often very useful to the students and helps show them the process. Showing examples of several concept maps helps the students understand that there is no one right concept map. If you are connected to the internet, a YouTube video should open in your browser that describes the implementation of concept mapping. Mini-maps are a much simpler version of concept maps. In the case of a mini-map, the key terms are actually provided to the students. Students work individually or in groups of 3 to 5 to arrange the terms in a logical structure. The relationships between the terms needs to be explained with directional arrows that include a word or phrase. Concept and mini-maps can be assessed by their levels of complexity and connections, although this is a very qualitative and subjective type of assessment. However, there are tools that allow the creation and quantitative assessment of concept maps. If you're connected to the internet, the video that describes several tools for creating and assessing concept maps will open in your web browser. Several formative assessment tools can be coupled with clickers, which are extremely helpful in large classes. C. Briggs has described 23 classroom assessment techniques from Angelo and Cross that can be adapted to clickers. If you are connected to the internet, a PDF should open in your internet browser that outlines these 23 CATs. Attitudinal surveys, typically called student evaluations, are usually only offered by the institution at the end of the semester. However, attitudinal surveys are most effective when offered several times throughout the semester. A few weeks into the semester, a mid-semester attitudinal survey. These provide the instructor feedback about minor issues before they become major issues. Attitudinal surveys are important because the student experiences influence their learning potential in the course. Thus, we encourage you to offer short attitudinal surveys at several instances throughout your course. I would like to conclude this presentation on assessment and diversity. Formative assessment provides constructive feedback in an open and welcoming environment and fosters an inclusive classroom. This can be an encouraging environment for students that lack confidence and are intimidated by direct criticism. Using multiple different types of assessment methods provides different learning environments for a diverse population of learners. And finally, assessment methods enable students to take responsibility for their learning in their own ways. Here are a list of resources that we used to generate the content of this short assessment mini lecture. The lecture was recorded using the Adobe Captivate software.